Welcome, 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 welcome. Pardon me for the slight delay this morning. Let's see what we got. Good bon matin, Bitcoiners. Ben oui, bon matin. Today's image reminds me of the fashion of the punk group Babes in Toyland. Thank you, Boo Boo Bodacious. I was trying to do, I think my prompt was a beauty pageant of meth addicts, and then I put zombies in it because, on Midjourney, they don't always let you like they'll just say we can't do that. It's some kind of community filter or something, so you have to appeal sometimes. It'll just say no, we can't do that. And so a lot of my prompts were not coming through. Showing drug addicts at a somehow drug addicts at a beauty pageant was just not happening. It didn't like the prompt, so we had to figure it out. Morning all. Beautiful morning for a coffee and a workout while enjoying the breakup. Thank you, LMH. I love that people do this when they're working out. I think that's a great mix, right? Good morning, Austin. Good morning, Austin. Hype for the next Bitcoin all-time high. Austin, I was repeating your tagline. So Austin works with Layer 2 Labs, Paul Stork's outfit, looking at Drive Chain. If you guys are looking for some technical information today, BIP 300, and Austin's come up with a pretty great catchphrase or slogan: all-time high technology. It's pretty good. I'm gonna catch it. I'm gonna copy it, Austin. I like it. I like it. Catching the show on the East Coast is way easier than on the West Coast, says Wacky. Yeah, I mean, so part of my issue, I like to come in the morning. My energy is best in the morning. That's just why we do it in the morning. So, in some ways, if I was in a different time zone, it would kind of be better because I could hit the East Coast and the West Coast. Broadcasting from the West Coast would be good, but I just can't live on the West Coast. I like it here. I like it here. We got someone coming from Australia. So nice and afternoon in Austria, pardon me, not Australia. Who else does that all wrong all the time? Remember Dumb and Dumber? Good eye, mate. My drive home from work music. Great. Yeah, that's another good time that I think it works, right? Drive home from work and all that stuff. So Nolan is my favorite news anchor. Great, Austin. Thanks, man. We appreciate it. Yep, Count BTC is good morning, America, on the East Coast of North America. Well, thank you, Boo Boo. Morning, everyone. I have a confirmation of a sunrise today. A little cloudy where I am, but we'll live, right? And guess what, guys? Bitcoin is running. So all that's left for all of us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. I count rings better than count BTC. All right, Don Lemon. We miss Don Lemon. Come on, poor Don Lemon. Right, we miss Don Lemon. Austin, don't tease Don Lemon. We miss him, but he doesn't do as good of a Moscow time as I do, I don't think. Right, and we got some awesome Moscow time stuff today. So the New York Times wrote just a few days ago. So I have a bit of a backfill that I can do here because I missed a few days. So there's days of fake news that I just never got to. But this one's good. A lot of people noticed it. It's from the New York Times. Not every pandemic needs someone to blame, guys. Come on, let's just stop the blame game. Who cares, right? Don't worry about it. The last pandemic, no one did anything wrong, even though I described yesterday the punishment that I hope to see, which is dropping people from space, because you can guarantee people will tune in, right, if you drop someone from space. If you get Tom Cruise hosting it, you're going to get an even larger audience, right? I can just picture Tom Cruise when he was flying up in that halo jump for Mission Impossible, and then, right, I would watch. The guy who jumped from space, remember that guy, that German guy or Austrian guy or whatever it was, jumped from, everybody watched. So if you go around dropping people like Fauci from space, you're going to get a good audience. That's all I'm saying, right? The hang time on there will be highly viewed, right? So the New York Times, though, saying, don't worry about it. We don't need anyone to blame. It's fine. It's fine. This is from Canada. Safer snorting kits handed out at a BC high school after a drug presentation. The kit includes straws and wallet-sized cards for cutting powdered drugs into snortable lines, as well as a booklet on staying safe when you're snorting. The school system's getting better, guys. It's awesome. Now, everyone said, well, maybe not Trump. If you go with DeSantis, then it's, at least you're not going to have to deal with the same attack vectors that the mainstream media and the left use on Trump, right? They're going to respect DeSantis, right? They're going to respect him. They're not going to call him a Nazi and all that stuff. Oh, wait. Vanity Fair report, Ron DeSantis will formally announce his 2024 bid with Elon Musk because apparently David Duke wasn't available. David Duke. He's, what's up with David Duke? I think he endorse Biden last time. I'm almost positive. No one talks about that. CNN politics. America's borrowing is its superpower, guys. Come on. America's borrowing is its superpower. That's the headline. But a default would tarnish that. Come on. The default would tarnish its superpower, guys. We need it. I'll even read a bit of the article just because it's so interesting. Call it American financial exceptionalism. The full faith and credit of the U.S. government goes far, real far. The United States is the best place in the world to park money. Unrelenting demand for U.S. government debt keeps interest rates low and makes the dollar the world's reserve currency. And U.S. government bonds are the most attractive investment in the world, enabling spending on whatever the U.S. wants, from defense to entitlements, schools, roads, bridges, technology, and science. America's ability to borrow and its sterling reputation for paying it back is its superpower. And if it doesn't do that for the first time ever, that reputation could vanish, guys. The reputation is going to be gone. The U.S. has the exorbitant privilege of being the cornerstone of the world's financial system. Its ability to borrow is the envy of the world, and that would be foolish to give up, said political risk analyst Maximilian Hess. Blah, blah, blah. So the Atlantic also had a pretty good headline here, and this is all about Twitter again, right? They love Twitter. Twitter is a far-right social network. To the point. Thanks. Excellent Moscow time. It can no longer be denied, writes Charlie Wurtzel. And I got this one from a user. We'll get back to the Atlantic. They're a theme today, but I got to share it, right? Because, we like eggs. And I've been promoting eggs here on this show for a long time, guys, and I'm starting to worry. Scientists warn that eggs are causing thousands of people to suddenly form blood clots. All right. So careful on the eggs, guys. Careful. That's from some British paper. So we got to be careful of the eggs. You don't want to deal with the bad eggs, right? Not good. Not good at all. So let's see. Today we're talking all about the proxy war in the United States. But first, we're going to talk a little bit more about this money, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about the money. So before we get into some of the debt ceiling stuff and what's going on with that, but we do got to talk about some of the poverty issues in Canada and the United States and what's going on. The Atlantic started talking a little bit about AI and what's going to happen with the increased productivity that we all get from AI. If any of you didn't see, I did a fun talk on AI at the Bitcoin 2023 show. Dhruv Bansal and Tur Demister. Dhruv came, we planned for the talk, and each time I spoke with Dhruv in the lead up, I was like, well, this is some pretty amazing stuff. So you're going to hear some pretty incredible stuff about mitochondrial processes and metabolism. A pretty interesting point he made that basically the difference between chemistry and metabolism is that life is essentially an envelope in which chemistry occurs, thereby making it metabolism. So metabolism in a pocket of life is the only thing that's different from chemistry, right? A chemical reaction can happen just out in nature, but if it's in this sleeve, in this envelope that contains life, inside of that, the chemical reactions which occur are in fact metabolic. And what he suggested was the cellular wall, the tissue of the cellular, the orienting force that separates it from just being chemistry and makes it metabolical would be Bitcoin private keys, something that I have been thinking about for a little while now. But don't worry about the problems with productivity, because The Atlantic does have a pretty interesting take here. Before AI takes over, make plans to give everyone money. The problem is that we do not have any policies in place to support workers in the event that AI causes mass job loss. The good news is that we do not need to invent them, Annie Lowry writes. Say hello to the universal basic income. Now, as many of you know, I have been a universal basic income fan for a little while, not because I particularly like the idea. I just don't think we're in a survival of the fittest paradigm here. I reject, as a human being, survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest is for animals, right? I'm not an animal. And because I'm not an animal, I think that humans distinguish themselves from animals simply because we don't play the survival of the fittest game. We play the survival of everybody game if we do it right, right? All human lives, absolutely all human lives matter, and all need to be prioritized and saved by the collective if possible, right? And we should find ways to prioritize strategies that allow us to keep as many people as alive as possible. I reject all Malthusian arguments. I do not believe we are an overpopulated planet. I will continue on the Breakup to argue for more people. We want more people, right? But that doesn't mean, and so for many reasons, I think UBI is going to be an interim situation. I've mentioned many times before that as we separate money and state, I don't think the US dollar is going to disappear. I think it's going to become exactly what people say it is, political money. And political money will be used in a very direct way in order to fund individuals, I think. And in many ways, if we're going to trade, and here's what would happen. I would trade the entirety of the bureaucracy for checks to individuals. No different amount of money being spent here, right? So, and I don't think this is a long-term solution. I think this is just until people can recalibrate themselves to a Bitcoin centered internally, not externally, right? Internally. If people can calibrate themselves to a Bitcoin centered internally, learn more about consumption, learn more about the problems of over consuming and what it can mean to your waistline and for all that kind of stuff. And we're going to get into some of the energy arguments that would support that in a moment. But nevertheless, it is there. But here's where she's wrong, right? The policies in place to support workers in the event of AI caused job losses. Well, there is one policy in place. It's in Canada. And of course, I'm talking about MAID, right? Medical assisted suicide. And it turns out there's a report yesterday, and we see now that MAID in Canada anyway is being promoted as an alternative to poverty, right? So medical assisted suicide is now a solution to poverty in Canada. Doctors approving assisted suicide for people worried about becoming homeless. So the have fun staying poor meme is going to strike a little bit weirder if we keep it up in the next cycle. Now, I love that meme. I love it, right? I actually sent it to Mark Carney once. I've told you that, right? Mark Carney, who was the architect of the martial law in Canada that I mentioned, that RFK mentioned as the reason for which he is a Bitcoiner now, right? And if all of you saw Bitcoin 2023 when RFK cited the Ottawa truckers protest as the reason for which he is a Bitcoiner, the cameras came to me on the analyst desk right away. And I mentioned to Trudeau, right, that the good news about him being a Canadian is that he can just apply for MAID. And that should be the end, right? and I 100%, I support MAID. I'm not one of these people who thinks it's a road to dystopia. I don't see any Bitcoiners signing up for MAID. I can't imagine anyone who's seen Bitcoin and is so optimistic about the future ever going for the MAID situation. Who's going for MAID? Well, I don't want it promoted as a policy necessarily. But if you are really of the mind that we're not going to solve these problems in the world and you're going to sit around and complain about it, I mean, what am I supposed to say, right? People have the right to do that. Whether or not it's because they're worried about becoming poor or other reasons. Now, does that make me heartless? I don't think so, right? I would sort of, if someone came to me and said, I'm thinking about committing MAID, I would tell them the same thing every time. But haven't you heard about Bitcoin? Well, you can also say, haven't you heard that Jesus Christ loves you? That'll work too, right? That's as good an answer as you're going to get, but that's been used for a while and people are still killing themselves. And they are worried about the money and the economy and the future, and they hear about global warming and all these things, right? So, I would tell them, look, why don't you have a look at some of the solutions that Bitcoin has to offer before you off yourself? But if you want to do it honestly, right, that's your right. Is it a policy solution? Well, if they're looking in the Atlantic for policy solutions to what we're going to do with all the AI things and all these job losses that will come as a result, it isn't accurate to say there isn't a policy solution other than UBI, which I also support, right? We also support UBI. So there you go. But the idea of the United States anyway embracing this, they might not have a choice, right? They might not have a choice because UBI and these other things, we'll see. But right now, what we know is that the US government is, and the Treasury in particular, is asking government agencies if payments can be delayed because we're at the debt ceiling. So they're already starting to say, well, can we delay the payments? Can we not send them to you? So they don't even have enough money right now to pay their own bills. And if you look at the structural problems with the debt ceiling, that doesn't look like it's going away. It looks like what they're arguing about right now is going to be there in a few days. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. So the flip side of it is that even rich places, right? So it's not just the national budget that's under stress with the debt ceiling, even local places, right? New York now finally asking for the courts to approve suspension of its right to shelter law. So there's a right to shelter rule in New York City, which means they go out and help people find places and they don't let them sit on the streets. But the amount of migrants now coming to New York City is sort of changing the calculus that people have on how to house these folks. So for a long time, if you didn't know, if you didn't remember, everyone in New York said, come on, Brownsville, come on, Laredo, the economic powerhouse of Laredo on the Texan border. You can handle all this. Come on, what are you talking about, right? And now the economics are coming up to New York and they're suddenly saying, well, the largest, most powerful, richest city in the history of the world can't handle more migrants, right? So causing people to sort of relearn budgets for the first time, which could be a good effect, right? I mean, people starting to talk about this more and more. Now, a place like New York, who for years has, as I mentioned, sort of looked down on border towns for not being able to manage the massive amounts of humanity, the sea of humanity pouring across the border, and now themselves with this the bus thing. We've been talking about it for a while, where Governor Abbott is sending buses to different cities, right? It started with Martha's Vineyard, and Martha's Vineyard, had a big, there were reports written for days later, the time we went through this, the time a bus came with migrants and a community came together to kick them out, right? That was the whole story. But if you start thinking about the debt ceiling and the pressures on the Treasury, the pressures on the money supply, the conversation around the creation of money in America and its relationship to poverty, its relationship to who's close enough to the printer, who gets the money, how it all works, actually doubles back really quickly onto this Ukraine-Russia situation. So we've got issues with housing migrants in the United States. We've got issues with poverty big time in the United States, right? But this note that I'm about to read really stuck out to me. And it's related to the Ukraine war. And it was shared by David Sachs. And it reminds me of something that I said right when the Ukraine war started in 2022. And remember, for those of you who were around with the breakup a year and a bit ago, one of the things that gave me sort of an icky feeling at the beginning of the Ukraine war was just talking about it, right? Remember everyone at the very beginning in 2022, everyone's suddenly a Ukraine expert. Everyone is suddenly knowledgeable about Russia and all this war stuff. And why is every single influencer online giving an opinion? And why is every single person who does sort of what I do, talk about the news, have such a educated opinion on Ukraine and Russia so far. So I remember at the time always mentioning my bona fides, so my history of knowledge in Ukraine and Russia and what it meant, only because I just didn't want to seem like someone who was just coming in from absolutely out of nowhere. So remember at the time I was talking about how I'd been to Russia, I'd taken a train across, I met Boris Nemtsov, the former prime minister of Russia under Yeltsin before Putin. He gave a presentation in Canada. They killed him. He's gone. He was assassinated. And also with the Ukraine situation, I was asked before to go and be an election monitor in Ukraine. I ended up being stationed at a prison, so I didn't think that was going to be very fun, so I did not go. So I've never been to Ukraine. My mother-in-law is Ukrainian. I meet a lot of Ukrainians. Canada, absolutely filled with Ukrainians. We're talking about a migrant crisis. We're talking about all the things Canada gets wrong. One thing Canada is getting right is Canada is about to take, I don't know how many, 80,000 or some large number of Ukrainian refugees. 100% for that. That is going to be easy for Canada, easy to integrate so many Ukrainians across the country. Wayne Gretzky, for God's sakes, right? The most famous Canadian in the world, other than Jordan Peterson, 100% Ukrainian origins. If you go to the US state, for example, of Minnesota, right, very much settled by Swedes and Norwegians and all that. Well, the equivalent in Canada, the breadbasket just across the border, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, far fewer Swedish and Norwegians, mostly all Ukrainians. So Ukraine and Canada have a big connection. In the parliament in Canada, when I worked in parliament, every autumn, most parliamentary offices, Senate offices, House of Parliament, House of Commons offices, so the Congress and the Senate equivalent in the United States, gets Ukrainian interns that are sourced from all the best universities and political science programs in Ukraine. They're brought over to Canada. This has been going on since the 90s in order to help support the human capital that will be future leaders, to give them experience in the Canadian Parliament, to help to show them systems that might work, might be useful for what's going on back there. So the point is, all of the point is here that I had a lot of doubt at the very beginning and ambivalence around people talking about Ukraine, and they didn't have any experience and they didn't have any knowledge. And I think a lot of people had a very similar feeling. So I'm not claiming I'm an expert at all. I just want to say that I have this bit of experience and have these touch points. But the reason why I'm saying all that is because this indictment that I'm about to read about what's going on in Ukraine ties both to the money and to this staging of talking points and framing of the situation in Ukraine by people who maybe don't have the best intentions in mind. So this is what this person said. This has clearly become a proxy war between Russia and NATO, supercharging the political considerations inherent to any war. Ukraine's goal is to wheedle as much military aid as humanly possible out of NATO, especially the United States. The United States' goal is more complex. Give enough aid to push Russia back, but not so much that it's a proxy war with Russia escalates into an actual one. This dynamic has created a Hunger Games scenario where Ukraine is constantly playing to the cameras to cajole extra gifts from the wealthy sponsors who watch its every move over the internet in real time. I had decided against using this analogy until I saw Ukrainians themselves using it. There is something grotesque and sobering about finding yourself in this position and writing about it, but it is what it is. And that's a feeling I already had a year and a bit ago, right? That something like this was happening, that people were preening for attention, that you had to make a beauty pageant out of it. It was a beauty pageant, right? You had to make a beauty pageant out of what was going on in Ukraine in order to have gifts showered upon you, in order to participate and to continue the role of what was going on there. Now, what we see in truth is, and this is David Sachs talking about it, right? About how this media spin is starting to run out of juice. And David Sachs says, this week, while Bakhmut fell and Zaluzhny was already a casualty, retired general and CNN commentator Mark Hertling explained in the Washington Post how Zaluzny and his forces will eventually liberate most, if not all, of the land occupied by the Russians. The neocon press is clueless. So again, we've seen the order of asks, right? It was, oh, we need javelins, which I think are great, right? I said they were a game changer from the beginning. Oh, we need drones. Oh, we need this. Oh, we need anti-aircraft now. And finally now they're at, we need F-16s, and we're just going to turn the tide of the war. And it looks like America's sending them the F-16s, right? So we'll see how that goes. The F-16s coming. The problem with all of this, right, is that any trust that we might have had in the media, especially given the very naked beauty pageant that's going on, with people just saying, oh, look at this shiny thing, you're going to get what you need. Look at this very huge danger the whole world's going to end if you don't solve this right now, right? All of these types of bated breath, short breath, panicked demands for more money in order to make sure we win the war are starting to lose their capacity to move and sway folks. And you're also getting the other side of the story more and more often. So James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, he's the fellow who goes in and gets the spy cameras. He sets these honey traps, like these beautiful women, or in the case of one where we saw the guy was enticed by, I think, another male. That's what it sounded like anyway. So there's a bunch of these cases going on, and usually these things hit, but he found a new really strong one where he got a special assistant to Fetterman 2024 all the way, right? We love John Fetterman. And so they got a spy camera with a special assistant, and he had some pretty interesting things to say about journalists. And this is what he says. Special assistant to John Fetterman says his boss is okay with overturning the Second Amendment, and hand-picked journalists like Kara Swisher will say exactly what you fucking want them to. Those were his exact lines, right? So in the secret camera, he's here explicitly saying that hand-picked journalists like Kara Swisher, as if we didn't know, right? We've seen Elon Musk take particular aim at Kara Swisher lately. I booked Kara Swisher for a show a couple of years ago and felt icky just doing it, right? Someone asked, we want the New York Times tech reporter. And I was like, you really want her? We'll get her, but I don't know about that. So luckily on the same show, I had booked already Glenn Greenwald and Naomi Brockwell, as well as Willie Wu, to all talk about Bitcoin. It was actually on the day the Taproot came online, and Kara Swisher had another section that day and had no idea what was going on. So I don't even remember who she interviewed, but it was dumb and stupid and no one remembers. So the point is Elon Musk taking her to task. If you don't remember what Kara Swisher did with the John Fetterman campaign, so I said when John Fetterman was running for the Senate that he was the first ever AI assisted candidate in the history of global politics. By that I meant he had that machine that helped him talk, right? And this was sort of last November, when not really, or October even, when not a lot of people knew about AI and what it was going to do and how it worked and all those things. And I said at the time, he's clearly got some kind of an AI device, but I don't even know if the questions going in or the answers coming out are even based on his answer, right? I think the prompt machine is just taking in the questions and coming up with an answer, and that's what you get. And so I called him an AI assisted candidate, which is fine. But Kara Swisher, so if you remember, it was like a normie journalist from even NBC. She just didn't understand that she was involved in the beauty pageant and that there was a mission here and she had to adhere to it. She said, this guy's a bit messed up. Like, his brain is not working great. And I don't understand a word he says. That's all she said, right? And I don't really understand it. So of course, Kara Swisher comes in. Oh, you betrayed him. What are you talking about? I spoke with him for an hour the same day. He's great. He talks eloquently. You just have to listen closely, which is all clearly a lie, right? Now, we love Fetterman. Really, we do. We're not anti-Fetterman at all. But Kara Swisher, on the other hand, right? So she comes out and says at the time, which is just a blatant lie, that he's fine and anyone can talk to him. It's your problem if you don't know how to talk to handicapped people. And so Now we see that the campaign is clearly in line with her when he says something like that, right? Handpicked journalists like Kara Swisher will say exactly what you fucking want them to. So is Kara Swisher going to be on the plane with Tom Cruise? Do we know? Do we know? And anyway, another reason why we support MAID, right? Another reason why we support MAID. What are these journalists going to do? Or UBI. It's another reason to support UBI too. UBI or MAID are the only options for people like Kara Swisher once we get out of this trouble and put the world on a Bitcoin standard. I believe that for most of these corporate journalists, right? It's got to be between UBI and MAID. There isn't much other room. Who's going to hire these people? Who's going to hire Kara Swisher after all of this is said and done? Who? They're right. Who would do it, right? So MAID, could work for her, but UBI could work just as well. So because she's not going to get like a job in a Bitcoin. Like imagine Bitcoin magazine. Well, what's your experience? You were a tech journalist at the New York Times, and then you lied to the American public for 10 years, and everything you said was part of a elaborate hoax to maintain power and order. And now you want to write for a Bitcoin magazine? You want to be my latex salesman? It's not going to work, right? It's not going to work. So the idea that it is this sort of Hunger Games situation, the idea that there is this kind of beauty pageant going on and everyone preening for attention and everyone trying to get the spigot turned on so that we can have another beauty pageant and another beauty pageant and another beauty pageant. Kind of contrasts well, right? Because this zombie meth addict beauty pageant that they're running to get fiat dollars down in Ukraine contrasts really well with the Miss Universe pageant being hosted in El Salvador. Now, a lot of people said when Bukele got on board with the beauty pageant being in El Salvador, oh, this is like, what are you doing with a beauty pageant? Well, if Ukraine is a beauty pageant and it's filled with some of the most detestable, ugly, spirited people in the world like Kara Swisher, then the opposite has to be embraced by Bitcoiners. We're going to get a show in El Salvador where I hope the prize actually becomes Bitcoin. Remember, the participant in this year's version from El Salvador had that elaborate Bitcoin costume on. It was the history of money and really the country now identifying very closely with its innovation in money because it's the first Bitcoin country in the world. So I look forward to the Miss Universe. I've never watched a beauty pageant in my life, but I might pay attention this year in El Salvador simply because it should contrast so well with this beauty pageant that you see, which is now the Ukraine war, right? It's a complete and total beauty pageant, and people are trying to stand out and stick out with their sad stories and their terrible facts, right, about what's going on, or they're made up facts about what's going on. So there you go. Now the I was going to talk about this beef thing in the United States, but I don't really have all the details. So I'm going to shove that one off to tomorrow. So apparently something went a little viral because Mike Cernovich shared it, and it was the history of a product labeling of meat in the United States. And I was going to tie that in here, but I think I'm going to do it tomorrow because I'm missing one of the documents. So thinking about the contrast again between El Salvador beauty pageant and the mainstream media and its framing of these end of the world scenarios, unless you print more money in both Europe, unless you print more money in America, unless you install UBI, unless you continue to vote to give more and more money to Ukraine. So the collusion between the military and the government and the media in this instant contrasts really well with what I think is becoming more and more vital to the whole health of the system. It's messages and arguments and journalism coming from smaller niche publications like CoinDesk and like Bitcoin Magazine, of course, hosting the show this weekend where you had all of these presidential challengers. You had none of the fog of war when it comes to global warming, when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to privacy, when it comes to censorship, when it comes to monetary policy. You know, the good thing about an event like Bitcoin 2023 and all of the shows that we do is you're able to get a bit of a sense of the whole world and an entire worldview out of one show where we touch on all these really vital aspects. But the work of the journalists is what makes it all possible. So the business model, if you guys weren't aware, both CoinDesk and Bitcoin Magazine, the business model has always been pretty simple, right? Give away free news and use that platform and eyeballs and connections and everyone that comes to see it as a staging ground for an event which pays the bills for the rest of the year, right? So this is a business model that I've been heavily involved in now for this will be 2015 till now, so we're at 8 years or something, where every year I've got this big event to start to manage, and the whole industry descends and you get a touch and feel for everything. But it turns out the journalism is still what makes it work, right? And the folks at CoinDesk, Nick Day, who I helped, his first day at the job at CoinDesk was sitting down with me for an hour and talking about the industry and all that. So literally before lunch on his first day ever, I spent an hour and chatted a long time with him. He's a great journalist, a real journalist. I mean, for real, right? He's at it. So there was a fake news story the other day about a mining facility, the Greenridge mining operation in upstate New York, and filled with fake news, just filled in the same way that we see these beauty pageant articles trying to get more money to Ukraine filled with fake news, the same way Moscow Time is always filled with fake news. So CoinDesk here saying the Bitcoin mining debate is ignoring the people most affected. Snowballing misinformation has painted an inaccurate and incomplete portrait of a complicated industry, and that is having a real impact on policy. So the takeaway is the New York-based crypto mining facility Greenridge Generation. Is it Greenridge or Greenidge? Greenidge, pardon me, I said it wrong. Greenidge Generation has found itself at the center of state and national debates about the impact mining firms have on the environment and their local communities. In New York, at least, this debate has led to legislation targeting companies like Greenidge. While the rhetoric used by all sides in the larger Bitcoin mining debate is often based on misinformation, in upstate New York, environmentalists are actually influencing legislation with arguments that are full of inaccuracies. But locals who live near the facility say they've been cut out of the conversation, and the broader debate ignores the role Greenidge plays in their lives. Nick Carter has an excellent breakdown of it, which is the following. Finally, a decent piece of journalism on the Greenridge mining operation in upstate New York. All activist complaints were false. The water discharge hasn't changed lake temperatures. It doesn't harm local fish. The locals aren't concerned about it. All of the activists are out of towners. It doesn't cause any noise pollution. It didn't cause any algae blooms. Greenridge didn't restart a coal plant to mine Bitcoin. They converted it to cleaner gas and provide power back to the New York grid, which desperately needs the assistance given the shuttered nuclear plants. These zero-sum, anti-growth, anti-human, neo-Malthusian activists lie and lie and lie and lie and lie and lie and lie. And that's from Nick Carter. So Austin says, at least CoinDesk is putting out a pro-Bitcoin article. I mean, they're not bereft of them. They're not bereft of them. Now, it's what I said. I was at the Texas show and for Consensus, and now more of my time by far, it's not even close, is aligned to the Bitcoin Magazine show, a choice I made a while ago. People say, how is Consensus? How is CoinDesk? Look, you love your children, right? No matter what, you love your children. It doesn't matter what they turned into, right? Did they turn into exactly what you wanted to turn them into? No, not even close, right? But I love them anyway. So when I see a good CoinDesk article, I'm happy for people like Nick Day, who I've known for, like I said, for a long time. Now, like I said, they write not great articles, but that's fine, right? we don't all get to, kids don't grow up the way you think, right? It's different. They're not exactly the same. So that's how I feel about that place, and so love them. So the point though being that this idea of an envelope or a wrapper or a narrative fog of war placed in almost all the issues that matter in order to create a result where the instinct is to go double back to the centralized response. The instinct is to double back to authority. The instinct is to double back to the activists and the experts and the science, right? This whole reflex is breaking down at a local level now. And that's the good news, right? The local people in this article who the journalists actually took time to interview. Did Kara Swisher go and interview any of these people? Of course not, right? Kara Swisher is not going on location unless it's to meet AI-supported Fetterman, right? She's not going to. But Nick Day, I sent Nick Day to the Joseph, what was his name? Cotton, the Quadriga X guy, right? I sent him right to meet the family. Like, tell me what the family thinks, right? Do they think he's dead? He believes yes. Not that he doesn't believe he's dead. But he believes the family believes it to be true. So he went right to the funeral, right? This is a real journalist who goes and does the hard work, logs the miles. He's been doing it since 2017 and been doing it very, very well. So Nick Day, when he comes up with these articles, right, I'm happy to read them. I have nothing but respect for the guy. And so the context here being that the ability for these fake news journalists to continue to bamboozle people at a local level is being threatened. Now, the capacity for them to do it at scale in the country also diminishing, right? The audiences are going down. How many people are still flying Ukrainian flags out front? A lot here in Canada, but I always explain it away by saying there are actual Ukrainians here everywhere. So those people, I'll always support their desire to put up a Ukrainian flag, of course, right? But the amount of Canadians that had no clue where Ukraine was on a map and were putting up flags a year ago was way down. Just like the amount of Ukrainian flags I'm sure you see in the United States, way down, right? And I go around there all the time. In Barbados, hard to tell because weirdly, I remember making this observation a while ago. The Ukrainian flag and the Barbados flag are the exact same colors, and they both have a trident in them. Sometimes the Ukrainian has a gold trident in the middle of its colors, and the Pageant flag has a black trident in it. But strangely, they're not the exact same flag. So there you go. There's always a reason why someone would want, that I can respect, why someone would want to wear the Ukrainian flag, but I still take it as a data point, how many I see them out in the wild and how many folks embrace it and buy into it. So there you go. See, we got this fella here. I wear Ukrainian flag mask over my black mask every day. Very good. All right, let's see what the comments say today. We got a bunch of comments here, right? Bunch of comments here. One second. Dropping Fauci with it. Exactly. Who wouldn't watch Tom Cruise hosting a Fauci drop from space? Everyone would watch it, right? Everyone. Now they can teach personal finance and taxes. Yeah, hopefully, we were pretty close to getting DeSantis at Bitcoin 2023 in Miami, and one of the invites that I used to persuade him to come was to talk about his high school graduation, mandate that to graduate from high school in Florida, you have to take a course on financial literacy, which is great, right? Great idea. And I thought Bitcoiners would definitely want to hear about that. Count, you slayed Uncle Justin at the conference. Did you talk about in a different video since the conference? No, I haven't. Hello, my name is. And I'm glad, so here's the funny thing. You know how in college we all have sort of with your gang of friends, or not even in college, just with your gang of buddies. Everyone sort of has a slogan or like a trademark insult or a thing you say a lot, especially when you're hanging around with people a lot, right? When I was in law school, my actual trademark slogan was kill yourself. I used to tell people to kill themselves for anything, right? And I would lead them in sometimes. I would say like, oh, I know what you should do when someone was complaining. I know what you should do. You can go, there's a skyscraper just around the corner. You can go in the lobby. The elevator doesn't require any special key or anything. Just go to the top. And when you get to the top, there's a window. Just open it and jump out and kill yourself. All right. So I would lure people in with this all the time, right? For answers to anything, just kill yourself, or even just to my good friends who would ask me for something that was silly or whatever. Just, do yourself a favor and just kill yourself, right? But now that it's a matter of government policy, just as I'm sort of coming back to Canada, it's sort of perfect for me because I can just dust off my old college insult again. And I can use it in a way, because it is government policy, I can use it in a way that's sort of uncensorable now, as long as I say MAID. If I would have said, Justin Trudeau, you can, kill yourself, it wouldn't have, it might have ruined the whole feed for Bitcoin Magazine, right? But now that you can tie it into government policy, it's really an excellent innovation on the joke, and I'm glad it's there. So I haven't said it again, but I'll continue to tell Justin Trudeau to apply for MAID. I think it's one of his best options. Are people going to want to hang out with him after all this? I don't think so. Is it me, but Canada wants to end as many people as they can? I don't know if they want to end as many people as they can. I don't think they're trying to ring up the stats here. I think they just follow the money, and they were like, well, you get all these funeral homes in it now, right? They're in the game. The funeral homes are all putting these separate rooms where you can kill yourself. I'm not kidding. It's like a new thing, right? So they got these separate rooms right in the funeral home. There's like where you would have the wake and all that stuff. And now there's the kill yourself room, right? So now they got to use it. They built the kill yourself rooms. They got to use them, right? So it's not going away, guys. We must embrace it. Do the eggs? This was the eggs cooked on a gas stove. Deadly combination. Yeah, that's trouble, guys. Careful. Bitcoin graffiti in the house. Good morning, Bitcoin graffiti. More people using more energy using Bitcoin. Yeah, that is the key, Daniel. And that's why it's so important that these stories and that there is research going on to explain to people and to provide resources to folks who are getting bamboozled about the energy arguments around Bitcoin. So I'll always have a ton of respect for Nick Carter for doing so well on this file. I think he's deadly in a debate around this, and he always has been. And there are others out there, Marty Bent, of course, also deadly. But the ability for these news outlets like CoinDesk and Bitcoin Magazine to do the work and send folks and put these interesting articles together might just save the whole thing, right? That might be some of the most important journalism, believe it or not, in World War III, which we are in the middle of. Jesus would have been a Bitcoiner. Absolutely. Everybody knows it. Thank God for Bitcoin is becoming, I think, one of the hottest, most interesting Bitcoin events in the world. And the minute I heard the name, Thank God for Bitcoin, I had a feeling it would be. So thank God for Bitcoin. Weird thing no one heard about MAID internationally, but El Salvador freeing people from criminals made news globally. Yeah, it's true. It's not what's in the headlines, it's what's not in the headlines. Why limit debt? It's USA Inc.'s #1 export. Absolutely. Yeah. Hi team, just finished everything divided by 21 million. Yeah, it's a good, everything over 21 million is the important thing, right? We need ChatGPT to generate a song about the Ukraine store style. Yeah, I had it do one for me this morning. Here, let me read it to you. In the final days of fiat, as the curtain fell, coins and notes. Sorry, let me start over. In the final days of fiat, as the curtain fell, coins and notes alike bid their last farewell. When value tied to nothing began to wane, echoing the whispers of a world in pain. Universal stipends sought to quell the poor, a desperate patch to a systemic sore. Death became assistance in medical disguise, a chilling reflection in humanity's eyes. The Treasury's cry, a beggar's plea, to delay the payment of an insatiable greed. While New York City's arms, once wide and free, now burdened and barred, no home for thee. A media hostage to the war machine's song, peddling fear all the day long. Influencers weeping tales of strife, their sadness traded for a wealthier life. In this chaotic stage, the pieces were laid for the dying breath of the fiat trade. And as the old world began to unravel, a path was cleared to a new financial travel. So here we lie in the twilight of cash, where physical value is but old world trash. In the sifting of the sand, the future unfolds. In Bitcoin's ledger, the new era holds. Remember the past and its worn out glory. Each coin, each note holds an untold story. From the ashes of fiat, we begin to see a glimmer of hope for what money could be. Thank you, ChatGPT. That could be a song, I think. Thanks, Lucky. Maybe everyone should fill in who's supporting the proxy war, which is forcing them to leave. Yeah. The US of Argentina, Latinos flooding major cities, everlasting debt crisis, corrupt politicians can't make this up. Yeah, it's here. It's not a lie if you believe it. Indeed. That's been the name of the game. At least, yeah, sorry, I got that one already. Adams should be the poster boy of politicians lying directly to voters and then doing the exact opposite. Do not trust words only, actions. Yeah, but he looks good. That's how same as Justin. I wear Ukraine. Looking forward to Justin making a pilgrimage to Cuba to learn more about its roots. Yes. Love Canadians like Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah, I mean, he works for the New York Times, so listen to him in the debate. Not great. Good morning. Great day, all. Yeah, indeed. Funny enough, this bad boy here, I got from Justin Trudeau's brother, who's a big Kennedy supporter. Everybody in Bitcoin knows the guy. His name is Kyle Kemper, an awesome fella. He prays for his brother and everything. His brother believes that there's some kind of a Epstein thing on his brother and all that, by the way. But here's what a cool guy Kyle Kemper is. So I knew him for he's the guy who got me in touch with Andreas Antonopoulos to get him at the Senate report, the Senate study that I did in 2014. And at the time, his brother was just a congressman. And, I knew him for 2 years before he was like, my fucking brother, the prime minister. And I was like, what are you talking about? Now he'll tell people because it's a big problem. But it was the funniest. I arrived at the hotel I was staying in Miami, fancy hotel. There's one of these big circular parking lots. I see this great big motorhome stuck, right? Trying to move it around, but there's not enough space. And out pours this beautiful wife and kids all over the place. And Kyle, in some flashy, colorful costume, wearing, this hat. And it just brought back every great feeling of early Bitcoin that I had. Hey, he says. And he's, of course, on the Kennedy campaign. And within no time, he's cracking drinks outside. And they're trying to shoo us away from the hotel because it's such a hillbilly scene now. But who cares? This thing was stuck and it was awesome. So there you go. I saw a Kennedy Democrat meme the other day and I need that hat. Yeah, the hat is great. My only regret is that it's white. That's my only thing that I don't like. I wore this a bit in Miami and so did a lot of people. You can get them at the show. And it's awesome, obviously. And the white is striking, that's for sure. It's as striking as the MAGA red hats, which I love, right? But this is better because I can wear it anywhere, right? I don't like wearing the MAGA hat because I don't want to get hit from behind. I don't like getting hit anywhere, and especially from behind. And so I don't wear the MAGA hat because you're just putting a target on your head, right? I wore the MAGA hat to brag the night he won in Toronto and just make everyone was too miserable to even muster a fight back. So that was just freebies. But other than that, it's not an easy thing to wear, right? You gotta really go out of your way. You gotta go to some, even a red state, it's not safe. Like I wouldn't go around wearing them. Trump rally is about the only place, and I have never been to one, unfortunately. Probably won't ever go. They sound dangerous. Not the people there, it's the crazies that get attracted to it. Who knows, right? So this hat, I can wear anywhere I want, and no one wants to kill me. So that's a big bonus in favor of Kennedy. It's a big bonus, right? Really big. So, but yeah, I agree. I mentioned the white hat. We get Justin saying white hat guy. Yeah, it's not. The thing is, it gets dirty. Like I don't let my kids touch it because who knows what's on their fingers. It's going to get ruined real quick. But anyway. All right, team. That's all I got for today. Get your Kennedy hat somewhere. I'm not sure where. I think you're going to see them around more. And they're great. All right, team. Peace. Thanks for your patience today. I had a little delay before I got on. That was unavoidable. Wasn't technical, but had to be done. Peace, everyone.